There are many British people who came to India with the intention of benefiting the Indian people. Here are a few examples. William Jones, 1746 to 1794. Jones was a philologist and linguist who came to India in 1783 to serve as a judge in the Supreme Court of Calcutta. He was fascinated by Indian culture and languages, and he learned Sanskrit and Persian. Jones was the first Western scholar to recognize the similarities between Sanskrit and Latin and Greek, which led him to propose the theory of a common Indo-European language family. He also founded the Asiatic Society of Bengal, which played a major role in the development of Indology. Thomas Munro, 1761 to 1827. Munro was a soldier and administrator who served in India for over 30 years. He was a strong advocate for Indian education and reform. Munro believed that the British had a duty to improve the lives of the Indian people, and he worked to promote economic development and social justice. He also established a system of land tenure that gave peasants greater security and ownership of their land. Mountstuart Elphinstone, 1779 to 1859. Elphinstone was a statesman and administrator who served in India for over 30 years. He was a strong advocate for Indian education and culture. Elphinstone founded the Elphinstone College in Bombay, which became one of the leading educational institutions in India. He also wrote a history of India, which was one of the first comprehensive histories of the country written in English. Here are some more examples of British people who came to India with the intention of benefiting the Indian people. Charles Grant, 1746 to 1823. Grant was a British politician and philanthropist who served as a director of the East India Company. He was a strong advocate for Indian education and reform. Grant wrote a book called Observations on the State of Society Among the Asiatic Subjects of Great Britain, in which he argued that the British had a duty to improve the lives of the Indian people. William Bentinck, 1774 to 1839. Bentinck was a British Governor-General of India who served from 1828 to 1835. He was a strong advocate for social reform. Bentinck banned sati, widow burning, and child marriage. He also introduced a system of English education in India. Thomas Macaulay, 1800 to 1859. Macaulay was a British politician and historian who served as the first law member of the Council of India. He is best known for his role in introducing English education in India. Macaulay believed that English education would help to modernize India and make it more governable by the British. James Mill, 1773 to 1836. Mill was a British philosopher and economist who worked for the East India Company. He was a strong advocate for utilitarianism, and he believed that the British had a duty to improve the lives of the Indian people. Mill's work had a major influence on British policy in India. Henry Lawrence, 1806 to 1857. Lawrence was a British soldier and administrator who served in India for over 30 years. He was a strong advocate for Indian education and reform. Lawrence founded the Lawrence School in Sanava, which became one of the leading educational institutions in India. He also played a major role in the development of the Punjab region. John Lawrence, 1811 to 1879. Lawrence was a British soldier and administrator who served as the Viceroy of India from 1864 to 1869. He was a strong advocate for Indian education and reform. Lawrence expanded the railway and telegraph networks in India. He also established the Indian Civil Service, which provided a system of government jobs for Indians. Florence Nightingale, 1820 to 1910. Nightingale was a British nurse who came to India during the Crimean War to care for wounded soldiers. She was appalled by the poor conditions in Indian hospitals, and she worked to improve them. Nightingale also founded a nursing school in India, and she trained many Indian nurses. Mary Carpenter, 1807 to 1877. Carpenter was a British social reformer who came to India to work with women and children. She founded many schools and orphanages for women and girls. Carpenter also campaigned against child marriage and polygamy. Charles Trevelyan, 1807 to 1886. Trevelyan was a British civil servant who served in India for over 20 years. He was a strong advocate for Indian education and reform. Trevelyan founded the Trevelyan Prize, which is awarded to the highest ranking Indian civil service candidate. William Digby 1849 to 1904. Digby was a British civil servant who served in India for over 20 years. He was a strong advocate for Indian self-to-government. Digby wrote extensively on the economic exploitation of India by the British. He also campaigned for Indian representation in the British government. These are just a few examples of the many British people who came to India with the intention of benefiting the Indian people. Their work helped to improve the lives of millions of Indians, and it continues to have an impact on India today.